Shane's going to move his phone because it's going to vibrate and make a
I should have my
sound.
black and white cards on me. I'm literally in all black and white right now.
Black Knox, shout out.
Super cool.
Is that how you pronounce it?
Knox. Yeah, Knox.
Knox.
That's going to show up super loud. But
That's fine. You guys like it loud.
Yeah. Welcome back to another episode of Slightly More Podcast. I am one part of the host. I was going to say one half.
What? Why do you always say I'm one half of the host? That one part is disgusting. Hey, I'm Shane. I'm one part of the host.
Okay, we're going to start over with that complete whole thing.
Just go.
Yeah. Welcome to another episode of Slightly More Podcast. I am your host, Shane Patrick Cruz, along with my co-host,
Chris Michael.
Chris Michael. I don't know what that was.
I'm one part of this,
one
man.
part of the. You're my rib
Imagine,
to my.
imagine being on an airplane and like the co-pilot comes on and he's like, "Hey guys, I'm one half of your pilot, or I'm a part of your pilot here."
Oh, God. Anyway, okay, so today we're going to be talking about how to open your show. Something that Chris and I have discussed quite extensively before, and
Yep.
I have reached out to other magicians about, and Chris has too.
We've seen other magic shows. I went to Vegas to specifically study this with Zach Alexander and Braden Carlisle.
Yeah.
We're going to talk everything about what you need to have on stage, to what you need to do before the show, to what you need to do trick-wise in the opener. We'll cover a lot of points here, but just keep in mind as we go through this, what works for us or works for David Blaine or works for any of the other shows we've seen may not work for you.
Yeah.
And we want to dispel the myth of a fast visual opener that doesn't use a volunteer. There's all these rules, magicians. And in episode 1 of Beyond the Magic, I said something that I don't think a lot of people understood. I said, I did not follow the typical rules that magicians were supposed to follow. And in my head, specifically, this is what I was thinking of. There were a few things, but I never followed the rules of not using a volunteer in the opener, opening with something quick and visual, being the best-dressed person in the room. I never followed any of that. And, you know, not to say I'm more successful than most magicians, but I'm more successful than most magicians. So there's not all magicians, obviously, but just the ones near me. And I think that these little things will help you stand out.
Yeah. So before the show even begins, you know, the opening of the show is not technically you. It is how your stage is set up before you even come out. Basically setting the audience up for a great show just based on what your stage looks like. And there's various different ways that you could do this. If you want to get more in-depth information about how Chris specifically sets up his stage, how I set up mine, then go back to the previous, literally the last episode of Slightly More Podcast and watch that one where we talk quite a lot about stage setup and
Intro also counts. I'm going to count intro as part of the opener.
Train of thought. You saw that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So intro, like having a CEO or somebody in the theater or the host of the show.
That's good. Yeah.
Introing is not technically. I'm not going to count that as part of the opener, but in this case, let's just talk about that because we want to talk about everything leading up to your first trick and then the first trick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many of you out there, performers, have been at a corporate event and heard this line? Hey, watch out for your wallets.
Here's Mr. Magic.
Mr. Magic is here. Like, oh my gosh, that's the worst. Or
and they'll say that about a $20,000 magician. They'll pay $20,000 to get a guy in there,
gosh,
and then the CEO who's got a million things going on doesn't read your intro, and he just goes, "All right, everybody, hands on your hips and make sure you watch your wallets because we've got a pickpocket in the room." And sometimes they'll say, side note, I was at a show and the DJ, luckily he was funny though, but he actually was making me laugh. But he would say things like, watch out, the magician's going to make you disappear. And like people aren't coming to my show. I'm like, dude, what? He's like, don't worry. He's like, he's going to send you away with a bagged lunch. He's like, don't worry, we'll send you away with a bagged lunch and an ID and an all-you-can-eat buffet ticket. You'll be in a beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. Just like saying like details on where you're going to appear. So every time he would say it, he would change the story a little bit. He'd be like, yep, that's right. If you want to disappear and get away from your home for about 2 to 3 days.
Oh my God.
Like he was making it sound like a vacation ticket. So it ended up getting funny. But if anybody else were to have done that and just do watch out, the magician's going to make you disappear. People are like, oh my God, I'm not going to go to this show. Like, there's going to be no personality and a lot of boxes.
Yeah. My last show, I did not have anyone introduce me. So it was literally the guy that hired me sitting in the front row going, hey, start whatever you want to start.
That's fine, though. I
I'm
actually like that sometimes.
Okay. All right. And so now, I think that one of the benefits of having someone else introduce you is it gives you credibility before you even come out, right?
Yeah.
But it's important. Not only should you write up your own introduction of what you want the person introducing you to say, you need to go through. You need to get that person right when you get to the show. Mm-hmm. Go through it with them.
Make them read it out loud. I always use this line.
Yeah,
actually
please do.
I always
That's what I was getting to, was setting you up for that.
Yeah, I have a joke about that. That I get somebody to read it. I did this when I was in West Virginia. Shout out to Dwayne Hill for letting me rock that stage. I love Dwayne in a way. He gets a lot of hate, but yeah. So
we love D-Wayne.
I don't know. I think he's a cool guy, but he sent me to a show in West Virginia, and one thing that I realized now, I have two ways that I'll intro. I'll have somebody intro me, or I'll come out and introduce myself. Yeah. Which there's a way to do that in a way that's not douchey and not too egotistical, and lets them know that they're ready for fun. But you still want to credit drop, because if you drop your credits, now people realize they didn't just get a guy off the streets or looked up somebody on Google. They got somebody specifically that they interviewed and wanted, and somebody people know. So. Yeah. And we'll talk about how to do that even if you're not one of those guys, how to build that up. But the reason I knew that I had to have in this case, the CEO or the president intro me is because everyone knew the CEO was the guy deserving of attention. Whenever he got on stage, everyone would listen. Anytime he passed by, everyone at the table had to greet him and say hello. And when I came to the tables, it wasn't like that. I'm just the entertainer, But when you can get the guy who everyone thinks is the big man in the room, say that you're the big man in the room, immediately now, if he respects him, okay, we have to listen up, because so you sort of become on an equal level with the CEO, president, whatever. You can dine at their table, which will help that, get to know them. But I sit next to him and I tell him, I'm going to text you my intro. If you don't mind just reading it when I come out, this is exactly what I tell him. I say, do me a favor, and if you could just read it in a way that's not like you're reading a novel, and pause at the parts you think are cool. Because when I mentioned that I consult for America's Got Talent, or I've performed for the FBI, in the same way you think that's cool, so will the audience. So pause and let them react. And I say, in fact, actually, if you don't mind, sometimes I have some typos in here, as I'm not too good at texting. Could you just read it out loud to me? And he goes, sure. And he reads it out loud. And I listen to the way he does it. If he does it wrong, I can correct him and say, okay, maybe when you do it on stage, just try to do it like this. Can we run through it one more time real quick? Sure, no problem. The other thing I always make a joke about, just to make it a little bit more lighthearted, like I'm not commanding him or bossing him around, because he is the CEO. He doesn't want to be told what to do. I tell him, thanks for reading that out. Yeah, last time I meant to type FBA or FBI, but it just said FBA. And when he said that, instead of everyone being like, wow, they were like, what is that? So I just want to make sure I didn't make that typo again. So thanks for reading it. Yeah. Things like that.
You're making him feel good about himself, basically. Or herself.
And that's why it's also important to not have a super long intro. A, less chance they'll mess it up. B, it doesn't drag on. And then C, if you have to have them read it multiple times, it's not super awkward.
And have your name at the end of it.
Yep. And
everybody give it up for Chris Michael.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So once the intro is complete, you got your stage set up in a way that demands respect and attention. You've got somebody who's notable. It doesn't have to be the CEO or president or a big guy, because sometimes they're not the ones you want to read it. If you have a conversation with the guy and you're like, ooh, this guy's boring.
Yeah.
Maybe don't have him intro you. Have somebody with a good personality. Maybe the person in HR or the event planner intro you. Yeah. And actually, they'll take it as a compliment when you ask them to do it. So just keep in mind that everybody's comfortable talking in front of a crowd, and you should respect that.
Right. So now that we've got the intro, we're walking out on stage.
Which I'm going to come back to my personal intro, because technically if someone's introing me, that comes before I walk out on stage. If I'm introing myself, it will happen after I walk out. So it's kind of in two separate places. So let's talk about walking out.
Go into that, because I'll go into how I did my own intro in the last show.
Yeah, so
go into if you want to share it.
I actually open with a trick first. And again, I do this cool thing with Jason Derulo's song called Wiggle, where everybody's hands come out. We do the David Copperfield twist, and actually I do a little joke to get out of it, just in case everybody wants to know. I always point at somebody who everybody knows in the room and, Kevin, I was worried about you.
Let's go before that, because the beginning before that is
true.
Even great. Yeah, so the countdown.
Yeah, the countdown. So I walk up, I cue my big music, I have a music that's kind of funny and showy, and then builds into this big kind of trap music thing. It's really fun. I grab my microphone, I say, ladies and gentlemen, I'm only going to ask this one time, so I need you to be louder than all the people sitting next to you. If anybody in this room is louder than you, you did not do a good job. And I say, take a deep breath in. Are you ready for a good show? And I yell it, and the audience goes crazy, and I say, it just sounds like it. And I cue my next song, and I say, ladies and gentlemen, the magic show is about to begin, and I have them do a big countdown. We count from 10 down to 1, and then right immediately I go into a trick.
Which involves everyone who can sit at their seats.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily, it is a trick, but it's not.
This is kind of the time I'm trying to get people to set down their drinks and put their phones away. I'm just trying to engage the audience. I'm trying to show up with big music. I'm trying to be big, larger than life. I'm trying to show that I can command a room.
Yeah.
So I get them cheering to show excitement. I get across the tone of the show with the music, with the big trap music and stuff. I come out to show that I'm loud and exciting, and I talk fast, which I'm trying not to, but
I just slow down sometimes.
yeah. So I'm going big with it. I get everyone involved, and this is also my time to bite the fact that, oh, you think you can sit back and watch the show and not be interactive? Nope. Even in the kids show, sometimes the kids will participate and the parents won't. So I say, parents, you guys too. And I'll call people out sometimes, like, Jason, come on, help me out. I think I did it at the last birthday party. I was like, hey, come on. And still nobody did it, but that was a weird show. It was weird show. Weird. But anyway, people come out. I get everybody to participate before I even do my intro. So they didn't even know what's going on. They might not even know it's a magic show. Luckily, I have the banner so they can read that that's what it is. But I am just attacking the stage, which is maybe not what you want to do. Shane has a different way of doing it that I think
very low key,
super low key, but demands a lot of attention and respect. And I'm gonna let him talk about it, but I do want to mention that a lot of people, both David Blaine, Eric Jones, have similar approaches to Shane. So I'll let you talk about that.
So I've had this question of the same thing. How do you hear as a performer, especially when you get into magic, you start doing stage shows, you hear the same thing every single time, which is this: you need to be doing some kind of magic trick in the first 2 to 3 minutes of walking out on stage.
Some people say 30 seconds.
Yeah, some people, I've even heard that, 30
to
seconds.
To establish that you're credible and skillful.
Yep.
Which maybe if you're not having an intro or a good stage production or any of that, sure. I mean, if you want to prove, hey, I'm worth paying attention to because I'm good at my craft, but it's usually not the deliverable, meaning it's not the show that wins people over. It's all the others, or not the tricks, it's all the other stuff. But go ahead.
But you find out that really what's most important is connecting with the audience. That's the great thing about the opening that Chris does, is it immediately connects with the audience and has them connect with him. So my big question was, I don't want, because I do a mind reading show, I don't want to have to immediately go into some. Plus, that's the difference in mind reading is I can't just immediately come out and do a visual trick and like, hey, I'm the magician. Like, the mind reading has to have some context behind it, right? So how do I connect with the audience without doing something, without going into a trick in the beginning? And we met with Eric Jones about 3 weeks ago now, and I was asking him the same question. What do you do in the beginning of your show that immediately connects without doing a trick? Because I knew that he didn't do a trick. And I also, the other side of that is, and I think this is what you talk about maybe with my intro, is I created an intro that is a video. It's a 1 minute long video. I talk about psychics. I talk about true stories that have happened over the last 200 years.
It's also very visceral, gets a good kind of emotional reaction out of the audience.
Yeah, literally the video starts out with a clock face, and it's a slow tick, 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 tick. Screen goes black. The video that pops up is me with my head wrapped in like a white gauze bandage, and I'm unwrapping. So it's me, once again, talking about framing. It's me in the beginning. It's all wrapped up. I have black duct tape on underneath that. I have my hands out like this, and then I start to, the voiceover comes on, talking about the stories in the past. I begin to unwrap my head as that's happening, and then I rip the duct tape off. And you see my eyes, and right as you see that, the video goes black, and I immediately walk out on stage. Well, that is very heavy. Not only does that video, at the end of that video, it mentions me, And so it basically sets the audience up for what the show is about. So same thing as the intro, Chris's intro sets him up for who he is and his credibility and all the things that he's done over the years. That show, my show is very theatrical in the sense that I set it up, in the way that I set it up. And so that the tonality of that video is very heavy. So my question to Eric was, how do I win the audience over after such a heavy moment in the first 1 minute of my show?
Because one fear about being a performer is, we're talking about being taken seriously,
right?
But you don't want to be taken too seriously,
right?
You want to make it. The trick that I've learned and my whole career is based on is, you want everyone to take you so seriously and think you're a big deal, except for you. You want to be the one guy that nobody really takes. You want to be the one guy who doesn't take yourself too seriously.
Yeah.
So, I've got all these crazy credits, and I am the official magician for the Washington Redskins. I have performed and taught at the FBI training corps up in Quantico. And people hear this stuff, and they think, here's this guy who's going to walk out and be like this. Like, it just sounds different than who I am. I'm sitting in my car picking my nose and eating cereal dry. You know what I mean? That's what I'm doing. So you don't. And there's something so unattractive about somebody who comes across like they're full of themselves, especially as a performer.
Yeah,
so
I've seen performers like that. It's very off-putting.
Yeah, and you want to just be vulnerable. Just be you.
Yeah.
And so Shane is worried. Yes, it's awesome. Yes, it's theatrical. But if he walks out and is just so serious, you're so rigid that you're easy to break.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
It sets people up psychologically. They're so tense. It's why you're supposed to have highs and like peaks and valleys in your shows. You want to bring people up, but you don't want to keep them there, because that high level of intensity, if you keep people there too long, it stresses people out. They need a moment of relaxation. And
Max Major actually feels this in his show. I'm not going to talk too much about the show. I've actually never seen it. I just heard that he builds this tension, creates this feeling of,
who is this?
Gosh, Max Major.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
And he walks out on stage after this big heavy thing and just looks at the audience and pauses. And here's what me and Shane are going to talk about. He pauses and he looks around the room. You want to talk about getting authority and respect?
You talking about Eric?
I'm talking about Max Major.
Oh, okay.
But a lot of guys do this because it works. You stand there, you stand straight and tall, open body posture, and you survey the crowd. You look and you make eye contact. Max Major, then he looks forward, he goes, boo.
No, Max Maven.
Oh, what did I say? Max Major? I'm sorry.
Max Major is a great mentalist.
I'm sorry.
From DC, now in Las Vegas. But we're talking about Max Maven, who is a very menacing looking guy.
Max Maven. I don't know why I said Max Major so many times. We talk about,
been in DC so much.
We talk about Max a lot. He comes up a lot. Yeah, was it Max Maven who does
Max
that?
Maven.
Okay. So I actually didn't even know who did it. That shows you how much I know. But and that's the thing, is as soon as you can survey the crowd and take seriously, Eric Jones, do you mind if I step on what you were going to say about that?
No, yeah. So the whole point of that is this moment to allow the audience to breathe for a second, right? So you literally are grabbing them and pulling them in, and then releasing
So tell them what you did to release it.
Well, I want you to.
Okay, so
talk about what Eric does first.
We'll come back to that.
Because you say Eric's, and this goes directly into that, which is you say Eric's intro is one of the best intros you've ever seen in a magic show.
And it's also one of the most casual I've ever seen. But let me tell you, he gets this video, big loud music. I think it was Kanye's West, Skinhead.
Eric's.
Yeah.
It's a great promotional style video in the beginning of the show.
Big bass, you feel it in your chest. The lights are on, the screens come on, and it's him dropping jaws of celebrities and on America's Got Talent and all these news shows, hanging out with models by the water, and he's just flooring people. If you know Eric, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not picking on him, but he's. So anyway, he this is what it is. Then he walks out, and he's in this, he's not menacing, but he wears darker clothes, and he's
like street style.
Yeah,
clothes.
He's street style clothes. He walks out. Yeah. He's got this big beard. He looks around the audience, and I'm gonna do exactly what he does. And this is specifically what he's thought about doing, and he always counts to 7 seconds. He walks out to the front of the room. And he smiles and he nods. So he surveys the crowd, he smiles and he nods, and then it's so funny how the audience actually claps. when he smiles.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, now we can. This guy is not so serious after all. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, here's the intro that I saw him do, because I actually didn't realize that he did that. I kind of picked up on it a little bit, but I didn't know he did it on purpose. But when we went to the hookah bar with him, we found he did it on purpose. But he walked out and he says, he smiles, and I was in Charlottesville at the time. So he goes, Charlottesville, how the heck are you? And they clap like crazy, and then he goes, whoa, no, like seriously, like how are you? And he gestures at one guy. He goes, how's your New Year's Eve so far? And the guy goes, good. And he's, just good? What did you do? And the guy answers, and he goes, oh, was it just you, or you brought the kids? The kids? Cool, man. Yeah, my son lives here in Charlottesville, so I'm going to see him soon, too. But I actually came here to do some pretty cool stuff for you guys. You guys want to see something? And the audience goes, yeah. And they go, wow, this guy's just here to hang out with us. You know, he's not here to perform at us. He's here to perform with us. Yeah. And he takes 2 volunteers. Can I have you and you just join me on stage? And he gets 2 volunteers on stage, and everyone claps, and the show begins. And there you go. So, and to me, that was one of the cleanest, because I love connecting to an audience and feeling like here's a dude who's distanced from me, I can't access, I can't talk to. He's a celebrity. To being like, wow, this guy cares about us? Yeah. Like, whoa. Yeah. So anyway.
So my intro that I did in my last show went over quite well. So you can imagine, like I mentioned, the duct tape gets ripped off. You see my eyes, and the video goes black. I immediately walk out on stage. I say nothing. At the front of my stage is a table much like this, and on the table is a wine glass and a bottle of wine. I walk out. I look at everyone, same as these other people.
Pour some wine for the kids in the front row.
Yeah. I survey everyone, still very serious looking. I grab the bottle, uncork it, pick up the glass, pour myself a glass, set the bottle back down, take a drink, go, cheers. And that moment of like, okay, like here we are, we're going to relax a little bit. So it went over quite well, because you can really feel the tension of everyone after this menacing video, and then black, and then me walking out, not saying anything, and this whole wine pouring. Also, something that we won't get into in this episode, I know we do this all the time, but callbacks during the show to first things. So that glass of wine is poured on purpose, because 2 routines later, I use that wine in a routine. So it brings them back, it calls them back to the very opening of the show again. And also, at the very end of the show, I have a little bit of wine left. I take the glass, and I say, thank you all very much. So once again, I bookend my show with the same visual. And the glass is empty, the show is over. And so it's a good tie-in and callback once again to the beginning of the show.
And there will be a long episode coming out about writing your show, and we'll talk about that in there.
Yeah.
But however, I think like in the beginning, it is important to think about setting up the whole show. But right now, we're talking about winning over the audience.
Yeah.
And what Shane did is a great way to do it. It's serious, it's heavy, it's theatrical. They let him know, hey, this is a guy who put thought into this. He's somebody worth paying attention to. But when he says cheers and smiles, he's acknowledging the audience.
Yeah. So I want to give 2 more complete opposite sides of that. Another one along the same lines as myself and Eric, who takes 7 seconds, is I went and saw David Blaine live. And if any of you out there that saw David Blaine live, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
It is a trip.
He literally walks on stage without saying a word. He has nothing in his hands. He walks out to the front of the stage, and I counted. He stood on stage for about 3 minutes without saying one word. He looks over, and he just, in very David Blaine tone, kind of visual tone, he surveys the audience. Still without talking, he reaches into his pocket, and he pulls out a spool of thread. He undoes the spool, and all of a sudden you see a needle dangling from the end of the spool. And he leaves that moment there. He leaves that visual moment, because you're like, what is he?
He wants you to piece everything together in your mind.
So he almost wants you to anticipate what's coming next by going, no. And then he unreels it some more. He drops it, grabs his lips, and you're going, no. And then he starts to put the needle and sew his mouth together.
Oof.
Still without talking.
And that's the opening to a show.
The whole entire routine is no talking, because he sews his lips shut, you ever seen him on Jimmy Fallon, he did the exact same routine. He literally gestures to the audience, to someone in the audience, come up. She comes up, they do the whole card routine. She cuts open the string. They find the card inside. Still, obviously, no talking. He says, "Thank you." She goes back to her seat, and he pulls the thread out, still hanging on to that moment. It's probably a 7 or 8 minute long routine. You got to think about this. The first 7 or 8 minutes of his show is zero talking. It is all visual. It is all building up a moment just based on the visual aspect of the show.
It's slow. There's no trick.
Slow. He doesn't rush it. He lets that anticipation build and build and build, and it's just really beautiful. Now you take the exact opposite of that. Someone else who I saw recently, we mentioned before, Alon New.
Hold on, I'm going to pause you real quick.
Please do.
I just want to say David Blaine also can get away with this for a few reasons. He's David Blaine. People know him, and they know the routine.
Right.
The other thing is, this is a theatrical setting. He's in a theater. If you went to a
Right.
corporate event, people don't quite
you
know.
can't do that.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Can't do that.
But take everything that we say and find out what works best for you. Maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe you want to get that same vibe across, but need to demand attention.
Yeah.
I just want to say that doctor each of these or prescribe each of these to what setting you're in, because that can fly for you. You can do a whole slow-paced thriller type of routine like that, because it does feel thrilling, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's just, I mean, the tension in the air was just crazy.
So anyway.
So
continue.
the opposite side of that is something Alon New does. He gets this big introduction from someone else. He basically jogs out on stage, real high energy, "Hey everyone," and then he starts going into scenarios of psychic ability, right? So, have you guys ever thought about someone and then all of a sudden they called your phone, or have you ever had a premonition about things
Oh
that
my gosh!
happen?
Remember, weren't you talking about somebody and then immediately they texted you when we were talking about them? Who was that? Oh, it was the company you work for.
Yeah.
That really. Anyway,
Yeah, I've had some weird things happen in the shows.
Shane, I believe has some sort of actual ability, because total side note, I'm gonna go quick. In one of his shows, he goes, "I have a feeling somebody has lost their wallet." After the show, some guy who wasn't even at the show shows up and goes, "I think I left my wallet here."
Yeah, he's like, "I lost my wallet earlier
All right.
today."
Sorry, this guy's the real deal. That's
also
awesome.
a complete side note. The last show that I did, I was doing the routine at the end where I'm reading the audience mind, and during that routine, I just happened to say this was not part of the routine. It's just something that came to mind. The lady had 4 daughters. She was wondering. Her question was she going to graduate nursing school? I went to move on to someone else. I came back to her and I said, I just have this feeling, was your mom also a nurse? And she said, yes. She flipped out, right? I didn't want to build on that moment because we were closing the show out, but after the show she came up to me. Have I told you this?
Yep.
Yeah, she came up to me and said, craziest thing, my mom was a nurse. She passed away 10 years ago. And the last 2 weeks, I've been telling my husband that I've been asking for a sign that my mom is still watching over me now that I'm in nursing school, and here you are, you picked up on that my mom was absolutely crazy.
So, anyway, but back to the opening.
Yeah. So he goes into all of these different scenarios of, is psychic ability real? Do we have the ability to see into the future? Let's try something based on all of that. And so he gives all the scenarios of the different kinds of psychic ability. The last one being psychokinesis, being able to move things with your mind. And he said, let's try something with that, with everybody involved. And that is the opening of his show, which is super engaging in the beginning. It pulls you in right from the beginning. It automatically lets people know what the show is going to be about. If I were to do a corporate show, I would actually incorporate some of that kind of thought process into the beginning of a corporate show, because you're right. You need to be a little bit faster hitting in a corporate show. You can't drag out and not say anything for 8 minutes.
Yeah, so now let's go to things that apply to almost everybody who's watching this. You're going to have somebody intro you who's energetic, has a good tone to them. Maybe somebody who people know, or somebody in a position of power. If that's not the case, or you don't have one, or in some cases you do have the guy who's in the front row supposed to do it and just go up, or maybe the guy who's supposed to intro you is in the bathroom at the time. That's happened to me before. Or if it is an important person, they get pulled aside or they get phone calls. Just always have your backup ready to go. I do my whole big attack the stage, get everybody cheering, countdown, arms out, and then I go into letting people know who I am and what they're about to see. I want to kind of foreshadow the journey ahead of us. I mentioned, so I always say, hey guys, my name is Chris Michael. And believe it or not, I say, could you say that for me? And they say, Chris Michael.
Yep.
And I don't just I always felt dirty doing that, so I make it a payoff for them. I say, my name is Chris Michael, and I'm going to try to learn and memorize as many of your names as we go throughout the show as possible. Mm-hmm. And actually, that's important because I used to do a callback to that at the end. I would say, I told you I'd memorize as many names as possible, and I would used to just thank as many people in the room as I could. I'd go to like 50 names. Just thank you, Jim. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Jenny. So I used to do that. So it was a callback. But I just left it in my show because I do try to learn and memorize as many names during the show as I can.
Yeah.
So I let them know, hey, if you memorize mine, I'll memorize yours. And it's a marketing piece. So, hey guys, my name is Chris Michael. Can you say that for me? Chris Michael. Cool. I'm known all around for doing lots of awesome things. I just tell them sort of what I do. We're gonna do magic. We're going to do some, I let them know what's going to happen. I give them a list. So in this case, we would say, maybe you're a miner. Hey, guys, we're going to try everything from psychokinesis to predicting the future and even reading your minds. Let me just tell you what I say. Hey, guys, my name is Chris Michael. I'm known all around for doing lots of really crazy things. I actually am a lot of you may know me as a consultant and somebody who works on 4 national TV shows, and then I crack a joke. A joke here is good to really attention. So I say, I work on 4 national TV shows, and just this morning, I make blah, blah. I'm not going to tell you the joke, but I tell a joke.
It's a good joke.
It's a good joke.
Sorry to not tell you, but...
Yeah, I'll just say it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chris Michael. I'm known all around for doing lots of weird and interesting things. Also well known for being a professional magician and a consultant for 4 national TV shows. And actually, this is super big news. I haven't told anybody here this today. Just this morning, I signed a 1-year deal with HBO. I come out and applause, going to get a huge applause, and I bow and say thank you. It's really an awesome deal. I saw it online for like $14.99 a month for free movies and TV shows and all my devices around the house. So you can finally watch Game of Thrones, even though I'm sure that ship has sailed.
It's super funny. People love it.
Yeah, so it breaks it down, lets them know I don't take myself too seriously. That's actually super important. I'm kind of glad we talked about that. I say, I also am a consultant for America's Got Talent. How many of you have ever heard of America's Got Talent? And I let them know, hey guys, because I actually do a trick or two that has been seen on America's Got Talent. I mean, you can say that literally even if you do SpongeBalls, because SpongeBalls was on America's Got Talent. So you can say, I've done tricks from America's Got Talent. Yeah. Anyway, I'm a consultant for America's Got Talent. Not only will I do some tricks that have been on the show, I'll show you some that haven't even aired yet that may be on in the next season. Cool little thing. And then I say, I'll let them know, for anybody who cares, I'm also the official magician for the Washington Redskins and have got the chance to perform for the FBI, but now here today, I'm here to perform for you. And then I'll go into my first trick and I'll say, I'm trying to remember what...
you go into the sound system thing.
Yeah, so I go, and actually that's really important that my intro makes sense. Jester Jim, who mentored me a lot, gave me permission to do one of his beatboxing routines. I do an old version of it. He has a way cooler, way newer, way more polished. He's a way better beatboxer version than what I do. I asked him if I could perform, and he said, hey, as long as you don't use a looping pedal or you don't juggle, it's fine with me. So there we go. So I open with a beatboxing routine, and I preface it as, but before we get started with the show, I actually need to do a mic check. I'm looking for somebody to help me out, and then the show starts.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to almost set people up for what's about to happen.
But I wanted to mention, sorry, because I start with the sound system check, that's the guys doing the beatboxing, which is also what Jester Jim does. He gets full credit for that. I now get to do about, it used to be 15 to 20 minutes of my show with no magic. I fixed that. It's about 10 minutes without magic now.
Yeah, which is crazy.
I don't do a single magic trick. I did learn that I have to let them know that this is a magic show. So throughout the routine now, I say, hey, before we get to the magic, I do need to try something out. And I'll even say, hey, this is the last thing we're going to do before we get to the first trick of the show. Could you do this for me? And I let people know, hey, I'm aware that I'm not doing any magic yet, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah, you also let people know, hey, we're going to do some interesting things with our mouth. That leads them into the first part. We're going to do some dangerous stunts. That leads them into the second part. And I think you even say, you say 3 things.
Yeah, so I say, I'm a consultant for America's Got Talent, blah, blah, blah. We'll do some of those tricks. So I talk about magic tricks. But not only will we do some magic tricks, I'm also going to do some weird things with my mouth. And I point to my mouth, and then I interact with the audience, excuse me. And then I say, we're also going to do some sneezing. No, I'll say we're also going to do some dangerous stunts. And each one of these has a little audience interaction piece. So I'm not just going off these quick. Each thing leads into a little interaction with the audience. But anyway, so I tell them each 3 things we're going to do, and actually, the sound system check is one, the magic is another, and then the dangerous stunt is the end. And so it actually helps me string my show along.
Yeah.
But my point is, I don't walk out and do any visual magic. I don't walk out and do anything dramatic. I literally walk out, tell them who I am, what I've done, what we're going to do, and then I go into the first piece. And let me tell you, it's worked wonders for me. I'm sorry I'm holding back, and I shouldn't be holding back. I just don't want to say exactly what I say in the beginning of my show. I told Jim when I was touring with him that I thought his intro was one of the best intros I've ever seen, just like Eric's, because it's so good at connecting them, shows that he's not so serious about himself, and let them know what they're going to see. And I loved that. And so I've taken it and tweaked it for my own purposes, but that intro is very similar to his. And I just don't want to go through my exact intro because I've said it so many times. And I want you guys to think more about what you can say as opposed to listening to mine and just using what I use. So think about what you can pull people along and tell the story of what's about to happen before you even get into it. Bring them all the way up. Okay, let's begin.
Yeah. Connect. It's most important.
Yeah.
Connect with the audience from the beginning.
And as far as what tricks you should perform in the beginning, I have a feeler on that. And
please.
It should be something that is used to connect. It should be something that shows we're here to have fun, if that's your type of show. It should be used to engage the audience and get them on your side. The first routine is a game to get the audience on your side. So with the beatboxing routine, I show them that I'm fun, I'm silly, I'm upbeat, I have more talents than just magic. A lot of the routines that we see, like from magicians, do you want to say anything on this? You might have some good insight about tricks. Like, what do you open with?
I open with, I have a balled up piece of paper I toss out into the audience.
Again, like for my first trick, I'm using a volunteer. For his first trick, he's using the audience.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to use an audience member. As if they like you, they'll come up. And also, sorry.
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid that if they ask for a volunteer, no one's going to volunteer. They have this awkward moment of fighting with the audience, and then you lose them. I've experienced this a lot. Before the show starts, I go out in the audience, I find one person, and I say, hey, I need one person to start off the show. If I don't get the first volunteer, no one else will volunteer. But if you come up and look like you have fun, I'll have no problem getting volunteers for the rest of the show. Would you be kind enough to come up and just help me start off the show? You don't have to do anything too crazy. I'll walk you through what's going to happen. They say, sure, and now I can go to him for the first guy. I don't have to fight with the audience. So if you are going to use a volunteer that comes on stage in the very beginning, maybe you want to try something like that.
Yeah. You can also use the walk-around magic before the show starts in order to pick out good people that are going to be volunteers.
And win the crowd over before it even starts,
Yeah. That's another complete thing, too. Now, my opening is tossing the paper ball out to select someone. And I say, I need, before we really get into the show, I need to know that we can have a connection between your intuition and mine. And I need to kind of figure out who has more intuition than another one. Who in here feels that they have a great intuition? I have people raise their hand. I throw the ball to that person. I say, just real quick, just first thing that comes to mind, name a color. Whatever the color they name, they open the piece of paper, and that color is written. I say, that's something just automatically came to mind to you, not something that I told you to say before. They go, no. And I go, you do have a great intuition. Open the piece of paper, and on the piece of paper is written the color that they had in mind.
Yeah.
Then that person comes on stage, and I do a stab routine.
One similarity between me and Shane is we say before the show begins, we need to, and this actually keeps the stakes low because it lets people know, hey, it's not a high formal situation right now because the show hasn't even officially begun. We're not even into the meat of it.
This is the warm up for all of us.
Yeah, so we keep the stakes low. And so he says before we begin, we need to test this. I say before we begin, we need to test this. And I've seen a lot of guys try that. The one thing you don't want to do, though, is continue to draw that out throughout your show. I used to say, like, oh, but before we even get to that, we need to do this. So the whole show is me catching them up to the last trick.
Right, yeah,
which didn't really work well. So now there's a definitive moment where I say, because when I send the first volunteer down, I say, awesome. Well, it looks like we're ready to see some magic. Who's ready to see some magic? I do some audience interaction gags here. And then I say, For the first trick, I need to get warmed up. And then we start with a warm up, and then from there on, the show begins.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to keep on pushing it off and off and off like I used to, but definitely you could keep the stakes low on the first one so it's not high pressure, which, in fact, David Blaine did the exact opposite.
Yeah, yeah. And I've played switching out my opening effect. I mean, sometimes I do something with reading cards, people that select cards, and sometimes I switch that in between, or switch that for the bag stab, the 50-50 bag.
And I was
stab.
holding on to this tip because I want to wait kind of more towards the end. Open with the trick that you do that is the most polished. That's one of the things I've heard is a lot of people keep it for the end. Open with it. If it's not super long and it feels you're comfortable with it, open with something you're comfortable with. The opener tends to be the trick that people change the most, and I don't know why that is. The ending tends to stay the same. The middle tends to stay. The opener is the one people change the most.
Yeah.
Don't I always open with beatboxing if I can because it's polished, it's fun, it works.
And it's not something super high pressure.
Yeah, stop reading these magic books that say your first magic trick needs to be within 30 seconds, highly visual, and get 3 audience responses, not using a volunteer, and be a solo piece. What?
Yeah.
No, you do what sets the tone for your show and works for you.
You shouldn't feel nervous at the beginning of your show. Like you shouldn't have to worry that the very first thing that you do might not work.
Yeah.
Why stretch yourself out at the very beginning of the show?
You can literally, your intro can be a conversation. Like if you want to just open with a conversation, like that's what Eric does. Eric's opener is his conversation with the audience.
Yeah, Lons was the same way.
And then he goes, you and you coming up, and then he's right into the meat of his show.
Yep.
There was really no opener. I mean, so.
The conversation is the opener.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You need to be the opener.
Yep. What else?
I think that's really. I mean, there's so much. Like, just we're gonna say some things to consider. We're not gonna go into detail. Think about what your show setup is. Think about what you're wearing. Think about how you're presenting yourself through your sound system. If you have one of those little mic things on your chat, I mean, some guys like that, so I'm not gonna pick on them. But have a mic in hand. Make sure you sound good. Make sure you're smiling and making connection with the audience, and make sure you look confident. Like these 5 things, if you're doing that to connect with the audience, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that's it.
I think that's good. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one.
And watch Beyond the Magic if you don't already. If you don't watch Beyond the Magic, take a look at it because you get to see a lot of what we're talking about in action.
In action, yep. That's it. Peace.